Inshallah, this second part of the session, we will start first with understanding what our product is. We talked a little bit about the market, now we'll talk more about the product. And then finally we'll close off with what I call the art of Dawah. So we've been talking about the science, the marketing part of it, the science part of it, but there's also an art part of it. So when we talk about a marketing approach to Dawah, there's two parts to it, the art of Dawah, the science of Dawah and the art of Dawah. And so we'll end off with that, and then we can have any questions you have and all. Inshallah, within an hour we should be done. I don't want to take it too long. But in order for us to continue, I'd like to surprise you with something. You have a quiz.
We didn't prepare.
That's the idea. You are students, so you're familiar with quizzes, I'm sure. So this is a what I would call a pop quiz. You did not know about it, and that's what makes it even more interesting. So I have a quiz for all of you. Please take a few minutes. Inshallah, it shouldn't take very long. Okay, let's start. Was that fun?
Yeah. Well,
No? Not fun? Quiz is always fun.
they are doing the same.
Quizzes that have no marks. Quizzes that have no marks.
No marks. Well, you're going to mark it yourself, so at the end of it you can give yourself 100%. Fair enough? Okay, let's start with the first one. True or false? All Christians believe that Jesus alayhi salam is the Son of God.
False.
Okay. Which ones don't believe that he's the Son of God? Do you know?
Jehovah's Witnesses,
Okay.
I think,
Okay.
are almost Unitarian.
Okay. Good word you used there, Unitarian. There's an entire group of Christians called Unitarians. And Unitarians believe in one God. They do not believe that Jesus is the Son of God. There are also groups of people who are very closely related to their Christian groups, but they call themselves Jewish. And they call it themselves Messianic Jews, because they believed in Jesus being the Messiah, Masih. So they are very close to Islam, extremely close to Islam. So there are many groups like this. Amongst the Christian denominations, there are many denominations, and there are quite a few denominations that do not believe that Isa alayhi salam was anything but a messenger.
Arios.
Yeah.
The Ariosians, the one who called Arios. He was the Unitarian who was chased to death after he declared it.
Right. Yes. Okay. Next question. Most Jews believe in one God. True or false?
True. I think true.
I guess.
The Jewish community is divided into different groups, different sects, and amongst them they have those who do not believe in God at all. There's a good number and a growing number that do not believe in God.
Atheists.
They're atheists, completely atheists. There's another group that is more agnostic. They understand that there is God and all, but not in the organized fashion. The majority of them, however, still believe in one God. Okay, next question. Hindus believe in... I'm sorry? The answer here is most Jews, so yes, it is true. But that answer is changing as time goes by. If the trends continue the way they are, maybe in 15, 20 years, we'll have to say some Jews believe in one God, not most. Because the growing trend amongst the Jewish community is more and more of the younger generation does not believe in God. That is the growing trend. So if you look up Judaism and you look up the different denominations that are there, you will see that they are divided into 5 different groups, and the 2 most liberal groups are the ones that are heading more and more towards not believing in God, and they are becoming bigger and bigger. So as time goes by, the newer generation that's coming along, they don't believe. They think of Judaism as a culture. It's like, okay, I'm Jewish and I have certain, cultural practices, but I don't really believe in all this stuff. Yes, brother?
So for now we could say it's true that all of them believe in one.
Not all. The question is most. So it is true that most Jews presently believe in one God. But that figure is changing as each day goes by. So possibly in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, we may have to change that question and say not most Jews, but some Jews. So this is interesting, the changes that are taking place. Next is Hindus believe in one God, many gods, the Trinity, one God manifested in many.
Many gods.
Okay, who thinks it's one God? Anybody? Many gods? Think many gods? Who says many gods? Some of you? Okay. Trinity. You're familiar with Trinity? Okay. One God manifested in many. Who feels that's the right answer? Okay. That's probably the most accurate answer from all of them. If you ask any Hindu, how many gods are there? They'll say one. You will rarely come across a Hindu that will say they don't believe in one God. Almost all of them believe in one God. If they know their religion, they believe in one God. But they say that God is in everything. Everything is God. It's one God, but God is everywhere. If God is everywhere, that means this piece of paper, I can worship it, and this is my God. I can put it on a table and go and bow down to it. That's their understanding. So it's one God manifested in many. It's a concept that in other words you can call it's pantheism. There's atheism, not believe in God, monotheism, which is one God, tritheism, which is three gods, or pantheism. Pan means everything. So God is everywhere, God is everything.
Pan, P-A-N.
P-A-N, pantheism. Who wrote the Bible? God, Gabriel, many people, prophets, and revelation from God.
Many people, prophets,
Many people.
You think God wrote the Bible? Okay, what about you?
It's many people.
Okay, the Bible as it stands today, we're not talking about the Injil or the Torah or the Zabur, we're talking the Bible as it stands today. And you can see there are different versions of the Bible. There's the King James Version, there's the Revised Standard Version, there's the Catholic Bible, and each one of them is different. Some, but they're different by the number of books they have. 66 books, 73 books, So the size of the Bible even keeps changing, leave alone the details. Which should tell you that it can't be, all of it cannot be from God. All of it cannot be from Allah. So all of it is not wahi, all of it is not revelation. All of it did not come down to Musa alayhi salam or Isa alayhi salam or Dawood alayhi salam. But it's a combination. It's a combination of hadith from the time of the prophets, from the hadith of Isa alayhi salam or the hadith of Musa alayhi salam. It is the stories of people. It is the stories, changed over time. You get a group of people coming together and discussing amongst themselves, no, we should change this to this. So it's all of the above. It is many people, prophets, and revelation of God, from God. Because you will see there is some truths in there. There are places in the Bible that you can identify. Of course, we cannot be sure 100%. And if you take the Bible in its existing form in a different language, then it's no longer revelation from God. It's a translation. Just the way if you take the Quran, if the Quran is not in Arabic and it is in a different language, then that is not revelation itself. It is now a work of man. It is human beings that have taken the original Arabic and translated it into different language. That translated version is not the Quran, it is a translation of the Quran. So the same way, the Bible also today, we do not have the original Bible, or we do not have the original Zabur, or the Injil, or the Torah. It's portions of it that are there, and that even they've been translated and translated and translated from one language to another to another. And there's a lot more else in there. Okay. Most Jews think that Jesus is a prophet, a son of God, the Messiah, a heretic, an ordinary man. Okay. That might have been a difficult word. You might have been searching for what that word means. Heresy means going away, doing things that are different from the normal. So being something that is totally against what society is, you become a heretic. So in this case, the correct answer would be heretic. There are some Jews that think he was a great man, and there are some Jews who do believe that he is the Messiah. Those are the Messianic Jews. But they become Christians if they believe that way. or they're treated as Christians. Unitarian Universalists believe in Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all of the above. Okay? Any other answers?
In terms of Unitarian, have only Islam.
Okay. There's two words there, Unitarian and
I
Universalists.
think we should think about Judaism and Islam, but as far as I know, Judaism are not universalistic because they think they are the only worshippers and the
Okay.
rest are, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, what do you think is the right answer there? Unitarian Universalists believe in?
I think it's the closest to Islam, for my opinion.
Okay. What other opinions are there? Christianity, okay? Did any one of you think of the answer of all of the above? Okay, you're right. Whoever said all of the above is right. Unitarian, Universal. Unitarian means they believe in one God. Universalist means they believe in all the different religions.
Wow.
So what makes them unique, and that's why I put that up there, is that I remember once being invited to a church, a Unitarian Universalist church in Orlando, Florida. And I walk into the church. I was asked to be their priest for Sunday. Every Sunday they have church service. They asked me to be their pastor for that Sunday. So I walk into the church, and on the walls I saw a cross, I saw a Star of David, I saw a crescent, I saw the Om sign, I saw the sign that the Jains use, I saw the sign that the Sikhs use, and underneath that there were books. There was a copy of the Old Testament, there was a copy of the New Testament, the collected version, there was a Catholic Bible, a Protestant Bible, different versions of Bibles. There was the Mahabharata, there was a book from the Baha'i faith, and there was a Quran there as well. So they had all the different books there. And on the walls they had symbols from all the different religions. And when they asked me to be their priest, they actually addressed me as pastor. Said, Pastor Muhammad. So when I talked to them, they were so happy to hear everything I said. And I was talking to them about Islam. At the end of it, they were crying and they wanted to hold me and hug me and, take me in as their own. Because to them, they believe in all this. But they also believe in Hinduism. They also believe in Christianity. They also believe in Jesus dying for their sins. They believe in everything. They say all different paths lead to the truth. That's their understanding. Very difficult to deal with such people. Because when you're doing da'wah to them, how do you do da'wah to them? They say, yeah, I believe you. Say, you believe in Muhammad being the final prophet? Yes, we believe. But you also believe that Jesus died for your sins? Yes, we do. There's a problem there. We have a problem with that. But to them, it's okay. All of it is okay. You can believe whatever you want. You be a good person, Allah will accept you. So it's interesting. Which one of the following is not a Christian denomination? Lutheran, Episcopalian, Methodist, Taoist, all of the above are Christian.
Taoist, I think.
Methodist, okay. Taoist, anybody else? Okay, Methodist is a Christian denomination. Taoist is not. Taoist comes from Japan, from the East. Okay, moving on, and we'll be a little faster. Some I will explain, some I will just move on. True or false? Most Christians believe that Satan, Shaitan, is a fallen angel. True? False? Who thinks it's true? The answer is yes, it is. That's what most Christians believe. True. That Shaitan was the leader of the angels, and that he is a fallen angel, meaning he went against God. He went against Allah, and so he's a fallen angel. What do we believe?
We believe like them. We believe
No.
like an angel.
Do we believe like them that he was a malaika? He was one of the jinn. Not. Yeah.
Some explanations that he could be one of the malaika.
Yes, that's what the opinion of some of the scholars, but the dominant opinion says
The dominant opinion says that he was.
he was
One of the
jinn.
jinns?
Yes.
And then, but he was pious in the first place.
Yeah. Pious is fine.
Yeah.
But the definition if you go by strict definition, I don't think there is a difference of opinion there. Because he clearly, in the Quran it says, I'm made of fire, he is made of, we know that the angels are not made from fire.
Yeah.
So from that strict definition, he could have been the head of the angels, but not an angel himself. Fair enough? Moving on. True or false? All Christians believe in the virgin birth of Jesus. I kind of gave you the answer earlier, didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah. So, false. True or false? All Jews hate Muslims. Of course, can't just say an entire group of people hates another group of people, right? All Jews are Zionists. Now, the reason these are important questions, even though the answer is very easy, is because I've come across people, our own Muslim brothers and sisters, who very firmly believe that all Jews hate us and all Jews are Zionists. And the sad part of this is that when you're judging other people, remember the first verse of the Quran I put earlier? That only Allah knows those who are astray and those who are guided. You see, when we make a judgment about the people that we're reaching out to, we already decided this person is, he's gone, finished. Right?
What do you mean by Zionist?
Okay, Zionism is a political movement with the idea that all Jews should come back to Israel, and that the purpose of the Jewish community around the world is to create the state of Israel and to recreate the kingdom that was originally created by Dawud alayhi salam. And that kingdom will be the kingdom where the Messiah will come, because they don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. They believe the Messiah is still to come, and that they will get rulership, dominion over the earth, that they are the chosen people. So it's a political movement. There are a lot of different versions to it. The religious version is this. But what I suggest you do is look it up so that you know what the political version of it, what it really means from our standpoint, because how it has an impact on us as Muslims. True or false? There are more than 1,000 different kinds of Christian churches. Probably true. I know there's the hadith of Prophet ﷺ that says that Christians will be divided into 72 sects and that we will be divided into 73. But if you look at the actual number of churches, the different kinds of churches, there are thousands. And where I spent most of the last 30 years of my life, I could go in America and go and found a church. I can register a church in my name and call it the Church of Muhammad if I want, and I'll be accepted as a church.
Different belief.
It could be any belief, it doesn't make a difference. They will accept you. That's part of their way of thinking. That's why they have so many divisions. And yes, they do fight amongst one another, and they've had horrific fights in the past. The Spanish Inquisition, even up until now, they're fighting with each other in different parts of the world. But there's nothing stopping you from making it if you want to. And it will be accepted by the rest of people. Because there are churches, for example, that believe in, they worship shaitan. There are churches that believe in black magic, sihr of different kinds. They believe in witches and all that. It's called Wiccan religion. And their churches, they officially recognize this church as a part of the larger Christian faith. Moving on. Catholic priests cannot marry. Yes, very true. That's part of their belief system, that they cannot marry. Women cannot become Christian ministers or Christian pastors or Christian imams. Is that true? Not true. Not all. There are many denominations where women can become priests and pastors. So it's amongst the Catholics it's true, but there are many other denominations where it's not true. 1 out of 6 people on the planet is Hindu. True? Anybody thinks false?
I think it's false.
False. We'll do a rough calculation. There are about 1 point something billion people in India, the majority of whom there's about 150 million Muslim, maybe 15-20 million Christian, another 20-30 million that are Zoroastrian, called Parsi. The rest of them are Hindu. Makes it almost 1 billion people in India who are Hindu. That in of itself, 7 point something billion people, a billion in India, and then you've got some in Indonesia, in China, in Japan, all over the Asian countries and in other parts of the world. You come up with a figure like 1.3, 1.4, which roughly is 1 out of 6 people. So 1 out of 6 people, yes, is Hindu around the world. Okay, most Christians believe that all humans are born in sin, the original sin.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, it is true. I said most, not all. If I'd said all Christians,
It would be false.
then it would be false. But most Christians do believe that we are born in sin. And that is why they need Jesus to die for their sins, because they believe you cannot be cleansed of that sin. Whereas we believe that everybody is born innocent, that they're all born Muslim, with the fitrah of being Muslim. And it is only later that they become Christian, Jew, or any other religion.
Yeah,
Yes,
what's the
brother?
other part of the Christian thing?
Many of them are more towards the end where Jesus did not have to die for their sins. Jesus was a prophet. There are some who believe that Jesus was a great man. So it all depends on which denomination there are. There are some who believe, the majority they believe in the original sin, but there's a good number of Christians that do not believe in original sin.
And they do not believe about crucifixion.
They don't believe in the crucifixion. So if you go back again, when we talked earlier, like for example, Messianic Jews, they do not believe that Jesus died for their sins. And there are others that think that Jesus' story is all just a nice story in the Bible, that you're not supposed to take it literally. It's symbolic. It doesn't really mean that he died on the cross and things like that. So it all depends with denomination. The Catholic Bible is different from the Protestant Bible. True? I think I gave you that answer earlier as well, right? Anyway, moving on. Orthodox Jews don't eat pork.
Yes.
I know that there is a group in Jews that they don't eat pork and they're as much as Muslims. So I'm not sure if they are Orthodox or not.
The answer is yes and yes.
Yes, sir.
There is a group, and that is the Orthodox Jews. These are the most, they are the most strictest of the Jewish community. And like I said before, the Jews are divided into 5 different groups. They are the strictest group. They're the ones that you see the photographs of. You know, the men have the black hat and the hair that comes down like this, and they wear black coats and all, and they have beards. Yeah, that's the Orthodox Jews. They're very strict about food. And in fact, they're far more strict than we are. And you go back to the Quran, and you go to Surah Baqarah and all, and you'll come across verses there that show that Allah made these rules for them even more strict. And then there are places in the Quran that tells us that Allah eased those rules for us. And the rules are made more strict for them because of who they were and how they behaved. But that wasn't the only reason. There's also a scientific explanation behind it. You see, as humanity progressed and we got better and better ways of preserving food and preventing disease and cleanliness, the rules became more loose. That's why the rules of halal are not as strict as the rules of kosher. Kosher rules, for example, they cannot mix milk and meat together. They cannot cook it in the same pot. So if you took a pot and you use that pot to cook milk or anything, any cheese or anything like that, you can't use that pot for meat. Now that is a rule from Allah that was given to them. It's more strict than our rules. But think about it scientifically. Why was that rule given to them? Cross-contamination. You're familiar with these things as medical professionals, right? You don't want cross-contamination. You don't want infectious disease to spread from one to the other. One has a higher chance of bacteria that will go into the other because they did not have the technology at that time to preserve those foods. So that's why it was kept separate. So there was a good reason for it. So today also, kosher rules, many of them do apply. Some of the rules they apply, they're very, very strict. Like for example, the food cannot be cooked on a Saturday because they abide by the rules of Sabbath. On the day Yom HaSabt, they cannot cook or do any work on Saturday. So if the food is prepared on Saturday, the cow is cut on Saturday, they cannot eat it. That's not kosher anymore. Or if a non-Jew made that food, they cannot touch it. You know, things like that. So they have very, very strict rules. And part of those rules is a punishment on them. because of their misbehavior, Allah punished them. Because they kept on asking for more rules, they were given more rules. You see? Now, moving on. Most Christians believe that Eve, Hawa, was the cause of Adam's downfall.
I think, yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Anybody think otherwise? They not only believe in the original sin, but they also believe, and that original sin is tied to eating of the apple. They call it the apple. We don't think it was the apple. We don't know what fruit it was, but eating of that tree. But they believe that the woman was the cause of that. That the woman is the one that tempted the man. Our understanding is both of them sinned, and both of them were given away by Allah, that these are the words that you should recite to ask for Allah's forgiveness, and both were forgiven. So it wasn't that one gender is responsible. They tie that into original sin, and then they tie it into the pain that a woman goes through every month. And they tie it into childbirth and the pain that a woman goes through childbirth, that this is punishment for her tempting the man with the apple. So this is interesting for us to know, just a little bit background, right?
Sorry, Doctor, don't they believe that Satan tempted Adam to eat from that tree?
They believe that Satan tempted Eve, Hawa, who then in turn went to Adam. It wasn't directly Shaitan to...
It's
Yeah.
not directly to Adam.
No,
But
they
first-
believe it was the woman first, Hawa, who was tempted, and she's the one who got tempted, and then she's the one who went to Adam and convinced him.
Are those people who are going to believe about the crucifixion?
Yes.
And so, if they believe about the crucifixion, how is it possible that they think that all our sins are forgiven, right?
Yes.
After the crucifixion.
Yeah.
So how is it possible that all the women are going to suffer, and from the sins that Eve already done by the birth and every month
Right.
she is suffering? So how is it possible?
That's the dilemma, right? Because on one hand you say, and then you can ask also the question, then what about poverty? What about people suffering in other ways? What about disease?
Yes.
What about illness? What about death? But somebody died for your sins already, according to them. So that is a dilemma. And they have, when you talk to them, when you talk to their priests, they have answers for all these questions. They do have answers for them. But this is not the time or place to discuss that, but khair, maybe later. The Bible permits war.
The Old Testament.
Both the old and the new. There are places even the new. But yes, the Bible does permit war. What was the language that Jesus alayhi salam spoke? Isa alayhi salam. Aramaic. Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. Moving on. Baha'ism is an offshoot of
This is
Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism.
if it is the Al-Baha'iyya, which is maybe an Islamic,
Okay.
Baha'iyya is a sect, yeah.
Okay, what do you think? Baha'ism, offshoot of? It's actually an offshoot of Islam. It's not Muslim. They're not Muslim anymore. But they came out of Islam. There were Muslims who got misguided and deviated. And they totally deviated because they believed in a new prophet. They believed in two prophets, the Bab and Baha'u'llah.
Like other Muslim denominations.
Yeah, so they actually went out of Islam completely because they do not believe in Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam being the final messenger. They believe that two other messengers came after. They are similar to the Ahmadiyya movement. Baha'i movement started in Iran or Persia. The Ahmadiyya movement started in India. And there was a third movement at that time. All three movements were around the same time. This was about 100 years ago or so. All three movements were in British colonies, one in India, one in Persia, and one in North Africa called the Mahdist movement. All three were political movements. All three talked about the coming of a new prophet.
Which one is in the North Africa?
Mahdist.
Mahdist, yeah.
Yeah. All three in the Sudan. All three were political movements and all three were creation of the British colonial powers. They are the ones who created these movements to create a division amongst the Muslims. And that division was the Ahmadiyya movement in India, the Baha'i movement in Persia, modern day Iran, and the Mahdist movement in the Sudan. The Mahdist movement died out. It did not pick up and it did not become a religion. But the other two actually became religions. And today you have millions of Baha'is and you have millions of Ahmadiyya. And many times people confuse Ahmadiyya with Muslims because they call themselves Islam. They don't distinguish themselves. They don't say Ahmadiyya. They say Islam. Khair, moving on. Unitarians believe in Jesus, the Son of God, three gods in one God, Mary as the mother of God. Okay, again, kind of gave you the answer earlier. True or false? Buddhists do not believe in God.
Buddhist, but Buddha, different army.
I think it's true because they believe in Buddha himself.
Okay.
The people believe in God, but the Buddha,
Okay. By definition, Buddhism means not believing in God. By definition, Buddhists don't believe in God. Yes, brother.
So is it true or false?
In this case, Buddhists do not believe in God. True.
True. So what do they actually worship?
They have. It's not specifically worshipping a particular. Like, they don't actually worship God. They don't believe Buddha was God, but they believe he was enlightened, that he taught them a better way of life. So even when they go and worship him, it's not like they're worshiping God, because they don't have the concept of God. But now, what is the purpose of this entire exercise? You see, the next session that we were going to do is the session of understanding the product. What is Islam? Yes?
So what's the big difference between them and the atheists?
That they do believe, they do have a set of principles that talk about creation, birth, rebirth, that you're going to come back, that life is cyclical. So they have a concept.
No superpower.
No, that's the difference. We talked before this session, before the break, we talked about the market. This session was going to be about the product. Yes, brother.
So I believe our benefit from this quiz you gave us is studying more about the market.
Aha! You gave the answer. That's exactly what I was going to say. So, that we need to know our market very well. So this group of people that you're going to reach out to, the 20,000 people, you need to know who they are. So if they have different faiths, different religions, remember religion, very important. You need to know what those religions are. At least have a little bit of an idea. But it also dealt, if you looked at the questions we had, some of them dealt with Islam as well. So this was a quiz which tied in the product and the market together. But it should highlight to you that there are many things we don't know. And there's a lot of research and knowledge that you've got to gather so as to be able to do your job better. I'm going to pass out this list of words. And this is part of this next session, or the quiz was, and so is this. Here. Remember earlier on I said you need to know your product, and when I said Islam, I said what Islam? I did not say what is Islam. And I said there are many different versions of Islam. Similarly, there are many versions to some of these words. Now many of these words you're wondering, what does the Kyoto Treaty have to do with Islam? Or who is the Ku Klux Klan? Or, I don't know,
Malcolm X.
Apocalypse, Americans with Disability. I mean, the first place, this particular set of words was put together for an American market. But it's intentional that I'm sharing this with you, and not for your market, because you need to go and put your own words together. I've given you a whole list of words that are meant for a different market. The reason I've given you a list of words from a different market is because I don't want to work for you. You need to know your own market. Right? So you need to go and figure out what your list of words should be. Why do you need a list like this? Why do you need a list of words like this?
To know our market.
Know your market, but also to know your...
Speak the language of the market.
Not just that.
Know their religion and beliefs.
Know the religion. What else? Many of these are product related as well. What a list like this does for you is brings or highlights all the issues that are relevant. So for example, if you are in your own community in Al-Aqsa and you come across workers from India, from South India, they're Malayalam, you not only know their language, but you should know what is important for them. So maybe they're Hindu, so you need to define Hinduism. So the word Hinduism is important. You need to know what it means. Because in order to speak their language, you need to know not just the language they speak, but also what they understand by certain words. And you also need to know words about us. So if I say Salafi, right, or Wahhabi, I mean sometimes you get insulted, or Ikhwan, or Daesh. So what does it mean? What do these words mean? Or if I talk about words, using medical language, let's say euthanasia, mercy killing, abortion, gene therapy, right? Lethal injections. Okay, let's say, all these, aren't they related to Islam? No, they're totally related. Can you kill somebody in Islam? Is it allowed to kill someone? Okay, what about euthanasia? Mercy killing. Can you use lethal injection to kill somebody because they are terminally ill, they have got cancer, they have you doctors say they're going to live for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, and they're in horrible pain. You're giving them morphine injections. So, in order to ease their suffering, are you allowed to kill them? Are you sure about that? What about somebody who, if you let them live, it's going to spread disease to others?
Keep him in.
You can't quarantine them. Maybe it's Ebola. It's a massive issue. The only way to stop the disease there is to eliminate.
You put them in isolation room.
What if you can't put them in an isolation room? You don't have the facilities. You don't have the resources.
Just go. Just killing.
Because if you're studying epidemiology, you may come across scenarios where you have an entire village infected. There's no way to quarantine the village. There's no way to stop these people from leaving the village and going somewhere else. Maybe it's birds that will carry. Maybe it's airborne disease. And if the winds pick up, it's going to transfer to another village. Your only choice is to drop a bomb and burn the whole place, incinerate it. Now what do? Is that allowed? Islamically, are you allowed? What do your shuyukh say? But it can happen, right?
Yes.
It's not that, medically I'm saying, I'm giving you examples that you're familiar with, right? So my point is that there are many things in the world today that we deal with. WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. So did Saddam have weapons of mass destruction? First we need to know what is a weapon of mass destruction, right? So the point is that these are all things that you deal with on a daily basis. Social media, what is social media? How do you define social media? How is that important to Islam? You say, well, it's not important to Islam. No, it is. Everybody uses it. You can't go to a masjid today and pray a salah without somebody's phone ringing. As annoying as that might be, but that's the reality of the world we live in today. How many times do you go to a restaurant and you see the father, the mother, and the children, each one on their own devices? All the time. How much time does that take away from us? Think about it. Would you accept as medical professions if I told you that that's actually a drug? That this phone you use is actually a drug? Every time your phone rings, every time you get a tweet, every time you get an Instagram message, every time you get a WhatsApp message, what's your tendency? What will you do?
Respond.
Respond. Check. Check first, then respond. Why? 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 Amal, you're medical. No, you don't have to. Why? There's a reason behind it. There's a scientific medical explanation for it. Why?
Addiction.
Aha. Conditioning. Aha. Two words that you use there. One condition, the other one addiction. How is it an addiction? How is it conditioning?
You get used to it. You have
Okay, conditioning is what? Explain to the others what conditioning is.
Conditioning is the more the ideas associate together,
Yeah.
the more they work.
So you ring the Pavlovian bell and the dog will salivate, right? For the rest of you who are not familiar with this is back a century ago or so, a Russian scientist Pavlov came up with this idea of conditioning, where let's say every time you want to eat something, what you will do is you will go wash your hands first. And when you start washing your hands to go and eat, because you're used to that, every time you start doing that, your mouth will start producing saliva. The saliva helps digest the food. So your brain is conditioned that that act causes this other act.
Responding to
yeah.
Encourage.
So this is conditioning that he's talking about. What's the other thing you said? Addiction. What is meant by addiction? What is an addiction?
Well, it's something you used to do it every time,
Obsession.
every day.
Yeah. If you don't do it, you will feel like something's wrong with you. You will actually get sick. Now, how is that conditioning an addiction? The phone. A message comes in, a WhatsApp message comes in. The first thing you want to do is read it.
Directly, you will go on.
Do you know why? Do you know why?
Because you get used to it.
No, that's the conditioning part, but the addiction part. Every time you do that, the pleasure center in your brain is stimulated. Dopamine is released. Little tiny doses of dopamine.
Yes.
And what dopamine causes is makes you feel good. When you don't get that released, you feel bad. It's actually a physical addiction. It's a physiological addiction in your brain. Every time you use that phone, you are enforcing that addiction. Not just conditioning, but a physiological conditioning that takes place. Right? That's actually done. About 3 months ago, you can look up studies done in England that talk about how using WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all this social media and responding to it immediately is something that is a physiological addiction that causes release of dopamine in the brain, and that's why we are all so addicted to it. Now imagine how Steve Jobs, several years ago, when he came up with this horrible machine, he changed how we think, how we behave. He changed society. So isn't that part of what we are all about as Muslims? When we're doing da'wah, when we're doing practicing Islam, we should know about these things. So all these words, and you can come up with all your own words that are relevant to your community, your organization. Come up with these words. But don't just come up with the list of words. Define them. So that all of you have the same message. So when you say, what is Islam? Is it submission? Is it surrender? Is it peace? Is it worshipping God? What is Islam? How do you define Islam? Allah, how do you define Allah? Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, how do you define that name, that word? What does it mean to us? Quran, Hadith, Salah, Zakah, Hajj, Saum, Jihad. Is it holy war? Is there such a thing in Islam? Is it or is it not? No. Yeah, I'm not going to answer these questions right now. This is all for you guys to figure out. Because like I said, there are many versions. Depends, you're Salafi, Ikhwan, Daesh, whatever. Right? All the different sects that are out there. Or that depends on which sheikh or the group of shuyukh that you go after. It all depends. But you need to, as a group, come together, have a common understanding. These are the words that are important to us. So this is the list of words. Then that list of words you need to define. Base that definition on the Quran. Provide the dalil, the proof for it, from the Quran, from the Sunnah, from the scholars, from the ijma', the consensus of scholars. Then have a position about it. So if you say abortion is haram, it's prohibited in Islam, what are the conditions for that prohibition? Why? Why is it prohibited? Is it prohibited? Yes or no? Are there times when it could be permissible? What are the conditions where it is permissible? So if somebody comes to you in your, setting, in the medical setting, and says, it's an Indian woman, a maid, who's, for some reason or other, she got pregnant. Now she wants to get rid of the child, because if she keeps that child, she's in trouble. Now you have an opportunity to do da'wah there. How are you going to do da'wah? You need to have these definitions in place, and you have to have a position about them, because it's important that we have standardized da'wah. That if you go to one person and that person tells you this is what Islam is, you go to the other person, they tell you the same thing. At least within your own organization you have to have that. You have to have that unity of message. So this is why these lists are important. When I talk about what is your product, you need to know your product. You need to define your product, you need to define your market. Any questions? Okay, good? Inshallah. Let's move on. Last part. Do you want to take a break or we just go on to the next part? I'm sorry?
So exactly, we should always have evidence.
It is good, it is excellent to have proof. You may not have it all the time, but it's excellent to have. And we will now talk about this last part, and this is where we'll talk more about these issues.